One evening, as Dell was lying down on her bed, the spell she casted on her brother came back to her. The spell struck her like lightning. In a village called Idid, there lived a couple named Abasi and Aisha, who loved themselves dearly. They had been married for 12 years and had 5 beautiful daughters, but no male child. Although they wished for a son to complete their family, none was forthcoming. This had Aisha in a very tight situation. She was at risk of losing her marriage because her mother-in-law and her sister-in-law named Dee had sworn to make her life miserable if she didn't give birth to a male child. Dee was her husband's elder sister. She was 59 years old. Dell was once married to a farmer, but after 7 years of living with her husband, he chased her away because she was very troublesome, stubborn, and disrespectful to him. She came back to live in her father's house and then became a thorn in the flesh of her sister-in-law Aisha. Aisha was under pressure from her husband's family, and because her mother-in-law was in support of what Dee, her daughter, was doing to Aisha, Aisha's husband Abasi didn't have the courage to stop his sisters and his mother from maltreating his wife. He was under their influence, and he didn't have enough power to protect his wife. He didn't know who to fight because it involved both his family. Aisha was left alone to carry the burden. There was never a day when Aisha was not reminded of not having a male child by her sister-in-law. Daily she swore to make Aisha lose her marriage if she didn't give birth to a male child. Aisha was thrown out of the men's family house and was given a one-room apartment to stay with her 5 daughters. She was not allowed to cook in the family kitchen. She was heavily discriminated against. Her daughters were not allowed to bear their father's surname because, according to their tradition, giving birth to only female children was useless. For that reason, Aisha's children were not allowed to bear their father's name. Each time Aisha's children came outside to play, Dell would call them all sorts of names and sometimes beat them up. She hated Aisha's daughters with passion, and she didn't want to see the girls moving around the compound. This made Aisha's children begin to live with fear even in their own father's house. Aisha's husband never said a word concerning this. He paid a deaf ear and pretended like he didn't know what was going on. Although he never neglected his family and he always made sure he provided for them, he was not ready to protect his wife from his own mother and sister. Life was like a living hell for Aisha and her children. Things began to get worse when Abasi's sister Dee began to give bad advice to her brother. "Why are you still keeping this here? She has proved to be useless by not giving you a male child. Neglect her or chase her away and marry a new wife. I have a beautiful female friend who will give you handsome boys. All you have to do is to chase your wife away and I will handle the rest." "No way, Dee. I can't betray my wife and children. Please let me be. I don't need another woman. I'm not complaining." "Oh, is that so? So you're not complaining at all? Since you are blind and have refused to complain, I will help you complain. I will help you fulfill your duty as a man. Just wait and see. My own brother can never be a weakling." "No problem, you will see." As time went by, the pressure on Abasi to chase his wife and children away began to get worse. Abasi loved his wife dearly, so he refused to take his mother's advice or listen to his sister. Because Abasi didn't do what his sister and mother wanted him to do, Dee began to accuse his wife Aisha of being a witch. One morning, as Aisha stepped out of her house to get ready to go to the market, Dell, who was already waiting for her, saw her and she began to pick a fight with her, calling her a witch. Aisha, on the other hand, did not retaliate. Rather, she ran into her hut and began to cry. When her husband Abasi came back and heard what his sister did to his wife, he was overwhelmed with the whole situation. He got so angry and out of rage beat his sister Dee. This made his mother angry and she began to curse Abasi. "You silly son! How dare you beat up your elder sister because of a woman who cannot give you a male child? How dare you? I have seen that you have been bewitched by her. I will surely get to the root of this problem." Abasi became so troubled by the problem going on in his family. He didn't know what to do and how to handle the whole situation. He was frustrated and tired. One evening, while he was sitting in front of his hut, thinking about his life, he came up with an idea. His idea was to leave the village for the city. Although he never wanted anybody to know about it, he had kept it a secret to himself all along. The next day, as early as 3 a.m. in the morning, Abasi took his belongings and snuck out of his house. He left the village, leaving behind his wife and his daughters. He moved as fast as he could so he wouldn't be seen by anyone before daybreak. When Aisha woke up that morning, she couldn't find her husband. She thought it was nothing serious. Perhaps he had gone out early because of his work. So she didn't bother to look for him. After 3 days, there was no sign of Abasi anywhere in the compound. It dawned on Aisha that maybe her husband was actually missing because he had never stayed away from home that long. When her sister-in-law Dee noticed the absence of her brother Abasi for too long, she started questioning and pressuring Aisha to provide her husband's whereabouts. But Aisha knew nothing and was dumbfounded. Life became even much more terrible for Aisha and her children. They were left at the mercy of her sister-in-law and mother-in-law. She and her children were so maltreated, and things actually became worse for them. Aisha's first daughter Nadia just turned 13. Dee, on noticing the puberty growth on Nadia, began to persuade her mother to give out the daughter in marriage at such a tender age. Dee began to invite so many men to come and marry Nadia, even without paying a proper bride price. But Aisha refused and stood her ground against Dee. "None of my daughters will I give out to marriage at such an early age. I will suffer and train them and make them reputable people in the society. I will never give out my daughter to such useless men you bring, Dee. You have failed." Aisha continued to fight for her children. After 3 months since Abasi left, something nice happened in the village. Aisha began to notice that she was pregnant. She was very sad, but at the same time, she was scared because she didn't want to end up giving birth to another girl, so she kept her pregnancy a secret. That same month, her husband Abasi sent someone from the city who brought them lots of food items and some money to take care of the children. Aisha was so happy that at least her husband was alive and did not forget her and the children. So she wrote a letter and gave it to the man whom her husband had sent. Dee, upon seeing what her brother bought for his wife and children, became very jealous and angry. So, my brother actually had the guts to send things for his wife and children, neglecting his own mother and sister. So, this is what it has got into. I am sure he must have been bewitched by his wife. I will see to the end of this. When Abasi got news that his wife was pregnant, he was very excited. He wished it would be a boy this time so that his wife would be free from his sister's and mother's torment. He kept praying in his heart. After a month, Abasi met a good friend who gave him connections to travel outside the country. Fortunately for him, he traveled to one of the Western countries. He was able to get a good-paying job and was also making a good amount of money. Abasi was excited about this. He started sending lots of money home to his wife, Aisha. Aisha and her children were living good, and they were not lacking any more. She had enough money to take care of her pregnant self and her children. They were living big and rich, and the husband kept sending them different beautiful items and money. They became the envy of all, and most women wished to be like her. The unimaginable happened. When it seemed like all has been going well for Aisha, the unimaginable happened. Del became so jealous of Aisha and all that she had. She couldn't hold back her jealousy and anger anymore. She was not happy. She wanted all that her sister-in-law had for herself. Her brother was sending nothing for her, and the little they received came through Aisha, and it was only for her mother. Aisha is the reason why my brother has decided to neglect his own mother and sister. He no longer cares if we exist. All he cares about is his wife, who can't even give him a male child. I'm sure she told him not to send anything for us. I have always known she was a witch, but this time around she pressed the wrong button. When I am done with you, Aisha, you will regret marrying my brother. Dee embarked on a journey to a very far village named Aokia, meaning the land of evil. She crossed 2 rivers before she got to the village, and when she got there, she went straight to a shrine called Isaka. This was the most evil and dreadful-looking shrine ever known throughout the entire village. When she got there, she began to place curses and incantations upon her brother. Ab, Ab, now hear me wherever you are. I am your sister, and you must love me even much more than your wife. You shall give them no more. You shall give to me from now on. You will not give a dime to your wife unless I ask you to do so. Everything about your wife will begin to irritate you. You will hate her and everything concerning her, and that is the only way you will have peace. After Dell finished her incantation, she travelled back home and pretended like nothing happened. From that day, things began to change, and Dell began to bully Aisha. Make sure you're carrying a baby boy. If not, you are out of this house. Aisha was very unhappy. After 2 months, there was never a moment of peace for her. After 2 months, Aisha got nothing from her husband, unlike before. Her husband would always send her money and gift items every 2 weeks, but for the past 2 months, she did not receive anything from her husband, not even a single letter. After a month, Aisha went into labour. Unfortunately for her, she gave birth to a baby boy. She was very happy, and finally, she now had a son. Dell, on seeing that Aisha had given birth to a baby boy and that there was nothing she could use against her anymore, decided to distance herself from Aisha while she kept enjoying the money and things sent by her brother back in the Western country. Back at the Western country, Aisha's husband got married to another lady, and he neglected and forgot everything about her and the children, including his newborn baby. Aisha was left to cater to 6 children single-handedly, all alone without help or assistance from anyone. She went from store to store begging for foodstuffs on credit. She began to owe a lot of people, including friends and neighbours. She kept borrowing from people until she was known as a debtor. Her friends were angry at her for owing them for too long. They cut ties with her, and she became an object of gossip. Each time she passed, people would begin to make side talks with her name. Aisha became a woman that everyone would gossip about. She became an object of pity and mockery. A few months after she started a trade, she used the little money she had saved from the money her husband gave to her in the past to start up a petty trade where she was selling different kinds of vegetables. Fortunately for her, her small business began to thrive, and from the business she was able to send her children to school. 2 years later, Abbasi became ill in the foreign land where he was, and he passed away from the illness. His other wife left his corpse and ran away, neglecting him with no one to give him a proper burial. His friend, on seeing what happened, sent news back home to his wife Aisha. When Aisha received the news that her husband had passed away, she was so heartbroken and she couldn't stop crying. She was asked to come and identify her husband for a quick burial, but she wasn't able to go because she had no money to travel far. Her husband was buried by his friend Olu, and that was how he was lost and forgotten in a foreign land. When Dee had about the death of her brother, she could not believe her ears. She was broken and wept bitterly because she solely depended on her brother for sustenance. One evening, as Dell was lying down on her bed, the spell she casted on her brother came back to her. The spell struck her like lightning, and she died while she was still lying on the bed. She was buried and forgotten. Dee's mother, who was already old, was left alone with no one to care for her. Aisha saw how hopeless and helpless she was. She felt pity for her. She would always send her daughters to give her food, help her wash her clothes, and do some other chores from time to time. The children she called useless began to take care of her, and they were her only hope. 10 years later, Aisha's children were all grown up. Some of them graduated from the university, and some were still schooling. Her first daughter, Nadia, became a surgeon and medical doctor in a very reputable hospital. She later got married to a successful and highly influential businessman. Her second daughter was awarded a scholarship and honours to study in one of the best schools in the Western world. They gave Aisha the life she always dreamed of. They built her the first, most expensive supermarket in the whole village and even got her a fine and big house. Aisha's children made her proud. They were successful and financially stable. They made their mother lack nothing and always gave her the life she dreamed of. she rode in expensive cars and began to give those who mocked her and called her a debtor. Her story became an inspiration and a source of hope to all the women who were mocked for only giving birth to female children. And through Aisha, many female children who were neglected by their family were able to go to school. The children that were called useless became a source of inspiration to many girl children. The moral lesson of this story is for you to remain strong, dear women. In a world that seems to value men more than women, it is easy to feel discouraged and belittled, especially if you are faced with the added pressure of bringing only female children into the world. But let me tell you, your worth is not defined by your gender or the gender of your children. Your strength, resilience, love and character are what truly matter. Looking at Aisha's story, she was a woman who faced discrimination, abuse and neglect simply because she gave birth to only daughters. Yet she never gave up on herself or on her children. She persevered through the toughest times, eventually achieving her dreams and raising successful and competent children. Her story is a reminder that you are capable of incredible things. You have the power to overcome any obstacle, and you have the potential to make a positive impact on the world. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.